Right now, somewhere in your life, there is something you've been putting off. You probably know exactly what it is. Maybe it's a message you haven't answered, a project you haven't started, a form you haven't filled in, or a dream you keep saying you'll begin properly next week or next month or someday. The strange part is, it's not a mystery. You know what you need to do. You might even know how to do it. You might be able to explain it perfectly to someone else. And yet, somehow, you still don't start. Instead, you find yourself scrolling, cleaning your desk, watching one more video, researching the best app to organize your work, or planning in detail what you'll do tomorrow. This is procrastination, not laziness, not stupidity, just that very human gap between I intend to do this and I am actually doing it. Tonight, we're going to walk slowly into that gap and look around, not to judge, but to understand, because procrastination is not just a bad habit. It is a story about how your brain handles time, emotion, fear, and self-worth. And once you see that story more clearly, you may find that something inside you softens and starting becomes just a little easier. Let's begin with a small, familiar scene. You sit down to work, you open your laptop, you tell yourself, okay, I have to write this email, it will take 10 minutes, let's go. Your hand moves to the keyboard, and somehow you find yourself on YouTube, or checking messages, or looking up something completely unrelated. You catch yourself and think, what am I doing? I'm wasting time. You close the tab, you open the email window again, your fingers hover over the keys, and then, almost without noticing, you are reaching for your phone. Maybe you'll just check one notification, just quickly. Minutes pass, a heavy feeling grows in your chest, guilt, frustration, maybe a little shame. You tell yourself, why am I like this? I should be able to do something this simple. The more you talk to yourself like that, the heavier it feels to even try. If this sounds familiar, you are not uniquely broken. You are pretty normal. Procrastination is not a sign that you are lazy or hopeless. It is a sign that different parts of your mind want different things at the same time. To see this more clearly, it helps to imagine that inside you, there are at least two characters. Now you, the part of you that feels the present moment, tiredness, boredom, fear, pleasure, discomfort, and future you, the part of you that cares about long-term goals, tomorrow, next week, next year. Procrastination is not simply bad self-control. It is often a quiet civil war between now you and future you. Future you is usually the one making plans. Future you says, I will wake up early tomorrow. I will study this weekend. I will start going to the gym. I will work on my side project after work. On the evening you make these promises, future, you feel strong. You might even feel a small rush of satisfaction, as if you have already done the thing just by planning it. But when tomorrow comes, it is not future you who wakes up. It is now you. Now you doesn't live in tomorrow's dream. Now you lives in the concrete sensations of this moment, sleepiness, hunger, a heavy body, messy thoughts, an uncomfortable emotion you can't quite name. Future, you loves the idea of reading a book. Now you loves the immediate relief of checking your phone. Future, you wants the reward of a finished project. Now you wants the relief of not feeling anxious right now. When these two pull in opposite directions, procrastination is often the result. From the outside, it looks like not doing anything. From the inside, you are fighting a quiet, exhausting battle with yourself. There is a simple psychological idea that describes part of this conflict. It's called temporal discounting. In plain language, it means we care less about rewards that are far away in time than about rewards we can have right now. Imagine someone offers you two choices. You can have $10 right now, or you can have $15 1 year from now. Many people, maybe including you, would choose the $10 now. Logically, waiting a year for more money makes sense. Emotionally, the future feels far, vague, and uncertain. The present feels real and solid. The same thing happens with tasks. The discomfort you feel right now when you open a difficult assignment feels very real. I might fail. I don't know how to start. This is going to be boring. People will judge the result. The benefits you get later, a finished project, less stress next week, a step toward your dream, feel distant and abstract. So your brain quietly does the math and says, let's choose comfort now and let future me deal with the consequences. You don't do this consciously. It's more like a background setting. This is not a moral failure. It is a built-in bias. Our brains did not evolve to optimize long-term career paths or manage enormous to-do lists. They evolved to handle immediate survival, find food, avoid danger, seek social safety. In a modern world full of infinite immediate distractions, a brain wired for short-term reward will naturally struggle. So when you procrastinate, part of what you're seeing is this: a very old brain trying to survive in a very new world. But procrastination is not only about time and reward, it is also deeply connected to emotion. We often say, "I'm procrastinating on this task," but it's more precise to say, "I am procrastinating on the feeling that this task gives me." Think about something you often delay. What do you feel when you imagine doing it? Maybe it's confusion, you don't know where to start. Maybe it's boredom, the task is dry and uninteresting. Maybe it's fear you might fail, be judged, or discover you're not good enough. Maybe it's resentment, this task doesn't feel fair or meaningful to you. Maybe it's overwhelm, the task feels too big, and your mind freezes. Your brain has a simple rule: if something feels bad right now, avoid it. And one of the easiest ways to avoid a feeling is to avoid the task that triggers it. So you click away, you tidy your room, you open social media, you start researching productivity techniques instead of actually doing the work. In that moment, this avoidance is not random. It is a form of emotional regulation. You are trying to change your emotional state from uncomfortable to slightly more comfortable as quickly as possible. Procrastination is often less about time management and more about mood management. The problem is this strategy works, but only for a moment. You get a small hit of relief, distraction, or pleasure, but the task is still there. And now there is something extra sitting on top of it: guilt. The next time you think about the task, you don't just feel fear or boredom. You also feel shame. I've already wasted so much time. I'm failing at something simple. What's wrong with me? The more shame you add, the heavier it becomes to even start. So you avoid a little more. The task grows bigger in your mind. The cycle continues. To break this cycle, we need to question a story that often lives quietly in the background. The story goes something like this: I procrastinate because I am lazy, weak, or broken. If you repeat this story enough times, it becomes part of your identity. Not "I procrastinated today," but "I am a procrastinator. I am lazy." Identity is powerful. When you believe something about who you are, your brain will look for evidence to confirm it. You delay one task: "See, I'm lazy." You struggle to start another: "Of course, this is just how I am." You forget the times you did show up, did finish, did take action. The truth is usually more complicated. You might procrastinate on tasks that threaten your self-image, tasks where, if you fail, you worry it will mean you're not talented, not smart, or not worthy. You might procrastinate more when you're exhausted or burned out. When your nervous system is already overloaded, any extra demand feels like too much. You might procrastinate in areas where your values and your environment are in conflict. For example, trying to do meaningful work in a job that constantly interrupts you or punishes deep focus. None of that is the same as pure laziness. In fact, many chronic procrastinators are not lazy at all. They can work incredibly hard on urgent tasks, on last-minute panics, on things that feel safe or familiar. The problem is not that they don't care. It's that their system reacts strongly to certain types of discomfort and risk. If you look at your own life, you may notice something similar. There are areas where you move easily and areas where you crash into an invisible wall. Procrastination tends to live near that wall. So what can we actually do about it? This is not going to turn into a productivity boot camp. The goal is not to optimize every minute of your life. The goal is to understand yourself well enough that starting becomes less painful. Let's walk through a few gentle shifts. First, instead of asking, "Why am I so lazy?" you can ask, "What is this task making me feel?" Take a moment and scan your body when you think about the task you're avoiding. Do you feel a tightness in your chest, a knot in your stomach, a fog in your head, a sudden urge to look away, move, escape? Try putting words to it. I feel anxious. I feel bored. I feel angry. I feel scared of failing. I feel like I don't know where to start. This simple naming of emotion already changes something. The task stops being a mysterious monster. You see the components of your reaction. Next, ask, what tiny version of this task could I start with that doesn't feel so threatening? Procrastination often feeds off vagueness. Write the report is vague and huge. Open the file and write one sentence is specific and manageable. Get fit is vague. Put on my shoes and walk for 5 minutes is small and clear. Your brain is much more willing to do something small and concrete than something huge and abstract. There is a simple tool many people use, the 5-minute rule. Tell yourself, honestly, I'm not going to do this for an hour. I'm just going to do it for 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, I can stop if I want. This works because it sidesteps the part of your mind that is terrified of a long, painful effort. 5 minutes is manageable. 5 minutes doesn't threaten your whole evening. What often happens is that once you start, the emotional barrier lowers a little. You gain momentum. You may choose to continue. And if you do stop after 5 minutes, that's still progress. You have at least turned toward the task. You have taught your brain that starting is possible. Another gentle shift is to change how you talk to yourself after you procrastinate. Many people use self-criticism as a kind of motivation whip. They think, if I'm hard enough on myself, I will finally change. In reality, harsh self-criticism often has the opposite effect. When you tell yourself, I'm useless, I always ruin everything, I can't even do simple things, your body doesn't suddenly fill with energy and clarity, it usually collapses. Your nervous system hears these attacks and moves toward shame, sadness, or shutdown. The task now feels even more dangerous because it is surrounded by the pain of your own judgment. Self-compassion is not about making excuses. It's about creating an inner environment where change is actually possible. Imagine a friend you care about tells you, I've been procrastinating a lot, I feel terrible about it. Would you say, yes, you're awful, you loser? Probably not. You might say, it's okay, you're under a lot of stress. Let's look at this together. What's making it so hard to start? You can talk to yourself in a similar way. When you catch yourself procrastinating, try a different sentence. Okay, I avoided this again. It makes sense that I was tired or scared or overwhelmed, but I still care about this. What tiny step could I take now? This doesn't magically cure procrastination, but it stops adding extra weight. Instead of digging the hole deeper every time you slip, you simply notice, climb a little, and adjust your path. It's also important to recognize that not all procrastination is created equal. Sometimes, what we call procrastination is actually exhaustion. If you have been pushing yourself hard, sleeping badly, dealing with emotional strain, or living under constant pressure, your system may simply be too drained to focus deeply. In that state, your brain will reach for easy dopamine, quick hits of stimulation, distraction, and comfort, because it is trying to protect you from overload. The problem is not just the task, it's the lack of recovery. In those moments, the solution is not always more discipline. Sometimes, the most productive thing you can do is to rest intentionally. There is a difference between numbing yourself and resting. Numbing is mindlessly scrolling, eating, or watching to not feel anything. Resting is choosing something that genuinely restores you, a walk, a nap, a conversation, music, silence. When you rest intentionally, you send your body a different message. You are allowed to pause. You are allowed to recover. We will come back to the work when we have more energy. Procrastination and burnout feed each other. If you never rest, tasks feel heavier, you procrastinate more, and then you punish yourself more. Breaking that loop can start with something as simple as giving yourself permission to be human. You are not a machine that can run endlessly at full capacity. You are a living system that needs cycles, effort, recovery, effort, recovery. There is another angle that often gets missed, meaning we sometimes expect ourselves to be able to do any task at any time purely through willpower. But the human mind doesn't work very well that way. If a task feels completely disconnected from what you care about, your motivation will dry up quickly. You might still force yourself through it with fear or pressure, but procrastination will be waiting for you around the corner. It can help to ask, how does this task connect, even indirectly, to something that matters to me? Maybe the job itself is not your dream, but the money gives you stability or helps you support people you love. Maybe the assignment is boring, but the skill you build by doing it will serve you later in something you actually care about. Maybe the chore is dull, but a tidy space gives you a calmer mind. You don't have to pretend every task is deeply meaningful. You just have to find a thread that ties it into your values. When you see that thread, the task slowly shifts from a random, annoying obligation to a small part of a life I actually want. That shift doesn't fix everything, but it often makes the emotional resistance slightly lower. Practical changes in your environment can also make a surprisingly big difference. If every time you sit at your desk, your phone is right next to your hand, open and glowing, you are essentially asking your brain to fight a constant battle. The path of least resistance will always win eventually. You don't need superhuman willpower. You need to design your friction. Make it easier to start the things you want to do and harder to slip into the things you don't want to spend hours on. For example, put your phone in another room for the first 25 minutes of work. Close unnecessary tabs before you begin. Open the document you need before you take a short break. Have your tools ready, notebook, pen, water, whatever you need, so you don't have to get up again and again. At the same time, you can add tiny bits of friction to your favorite distractions. Log out of apps that pull you in too easily, move them off your home screen, use website blockers for the first deep work block of the day. These steps don't remove procrastination, but they tilt the environment in your favor so that now you doesn't always have to fight alone. As you listen to all of this, notice what your mind is doing. You might be thinking, yes, I know all of this, and yet I still procrastinate. That's okay. Knowing something intellectually is not the same as feeling safe to behave differently. Change in this area is often slow because you are not just changing habits. You are changing the way your nervous system responds to discomfort. You are teaching yourself, gently, that starting a task does not equal instant humiliation or endless suffering, that you can feel a bit of anxiety and still move your fingers, that you can feel imperfect and still write the first sentence. You are also learning to separate your worth from your productivity. You are not only valuable when you are efficient, you are not only acceptable when you perform perfectly. From that place, paradoxically, it becomes easier to show up and do the work. Because you're no longer doing it to earn the right to exist. You're doing it because you care, because you choose to, because future you is someone you'd like to be kind to. Think for a moment about future you. Imagine yourself 6 months from now, or 1 year, or 5 years. Try to picture not just the goals, but the daily life of that future person, where they wake up, how they feel in their body, what kind of work they do, or who they spend time with. Future you is not a stranger. Future you is you, but later. They will have to live with the results of what now you does or doesn't do. When you procrastinate, you are often pushing discomfort forward into their life. When you take a small step today, you are sending them a gift, a slightly easier tomorrow. You don't need to feel guilty about this. Guilt rarely helps. You can relate to future you the way you would to a friend. You might ask yourself, if I cared about this person, what small favor could I do for them today? Not a grand, heroic act, just a small favor. Maybe that favor is sending one email they don't want to write. Maybe it's studying for 15 minutes so they're less stressed next week. Maybe it's going to bed half an hour earlier so they wake up with a bit more energy. Bit by bit, you can build a sense of trust between now you and future you. Future you starts to feel less like a distant stranger and more like a partner you are working with. As we slowly come toward the end of this reflection, it's important to say one more thing clearly. You will procrastinate again. You will have days where you avoid, distract, delay. You will have tasks that trigger old fears and patterns. You will fall back into scrolling, into overthinking, into "I'll start tomorrow." This does not mean you have failed. It means you are human. The real shift is not to eliminate procrastination completely. The shift is to shorten the time between noticing and gently returning. Instead of losing whole weeks in a fog of avoidance, maybe you lose a day, then a few hours, then a few minutes. Instead of responding with "what's wrong with me?" you respond with I see what I'm doing. I was scared or tired. Let me try a tiny step now." Over time, these small adjustments add up. You may still procrastinate, but you won't be ruled by it in the same way. Right now, as this audio moves toward its final moments, you might feel a familiar choice appearing. When this ends, what will you do next? You don't have to overhaul your life. You don't have to fix everything in one night. Maybe there is just one small action that would be kind to future you. One message, one paragraph, one page, one phone call, one tiny piece of a larger task. If that feels like too much, maybe the smallest action is simply to write the task down and choose a realistic time to revisit it. Whatever you choose, remember this: procrastination is not a personal curse. It is a pattern, a mix of ancient brain wiring, modern distractions, difficult emotions, and protective strategies. Patterns can change, slowly, gently, with understanding instead of hatred. Thank you for spending this time listening, reflecting, and being honest with yourself. Whether you start something right after this, or simply let these ideas sit quietly in the back of your mind, you have already taken a step. You have looked at procrastination not as a monster, but as a message. And that, in itself, is a different way of being with it.